Rich Westman in Wyoming.
Yep, and I'm following Stella from Morton's County. So it's good to have you with us and so you can introduce yourself.
Sure.
And we'll get started.
I am Dave DiBiase, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Buildings and General Services here. And we're excited to be here, hopefully share some information and get to some common ground.
Well, we
Yeah, sure.
received quite a few emails
Okay.
from people in Montpelier here that run and
Sure.
participate in the farmers market, and it seems like they've been in a location for a given period of time, but this particular summer, you folks need that for some other
Yeah.
operation. So
Yeah,
could you kind of fill us in on what's happening and why that had to happen, or why you're proposing it to happen?
of course. And we did put together a quick presentation just to give some visual. I always like pictures. I do better with those type of books here. So, BGS as a whole undertook, so there's State Street the day of the flood.
That's good.
That level we're seeing there is about 30 feet above where the location of many of the mechanical systems are in that building. So they're, and our friends here at HCI have seen some of this and talked some of it, but many of the mechanical systems, so all the HVAC, all the plumbing, all the heating, all the electrical systems, the electrical supply systems are 20 to 25 feet below grade in this building. So what's happening, and you can see there at this level, it's probably about 30 feet because we're even higher with those windows. So what we're talking about, and really the reason that we've talked, and maybe our messaging wasn't as clear as it could have been back to the capital city market, unfortunately, we were hoping it was more of a conversational piece and get to some common ground and some sort of adversarial type of communication. But, here we are, and that's okay. So we had spoke about the need for ability in the upper lot of this parking lot currently. There's temporary chillers that are on tractor trailer mounted equipment. There's generators that run those through the summertime. Those run 24/7. They get fueled by fuel trucks each day, even midday or night, depending on the load. And then further to that, and a piece that we didn't do a great job explaining really, is that there's still a lot of planning and operations that need to occur. So as much of the buildings have been cleaned out from water, sewer, all the nasty stuff that was down there, the mechanical equipment. And if any of you guys are familiar with 133 State Street, there's a little square building in the parking lot that's really out of place. That was the ice shaft back when that building was first built, and they dropped big ice cubes down, and that's how they cooled that National Life building in the 20s and 30s, which is really cool.
Really?
Yes. And that building today is an air shaft for us. But every piece of mechanical equipment that's down that 30 feet below grade has to get disassembled, craned up through that shaft, cut some concrete walls out to get the equipment out. And that is a hugely time-consuming and large operation. The reason we didn't otherwise allude to that in our communication is it's still in planning phases. Our consultants are still trying to figure out how they can tackle that. Most of it's got to get disassembled and maybe cut up. So that involves a crane coming in, craning down through that shaft to take the roof off of it. We cut a concrete wall out to be able to get the equipment back out through it that they blocked in when they did the construction, and piece by piece crane out and then put somewhere in a parking lot for eventual disposal. I can't tell you guys today that that's going to start on May 1st. We just don't have the knowledge yet. But as we work through this presentation, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll kind of work through it a little bit. So we had 17 buildings that were damaged on the complex in total. And the early estimates are right around $300 million worth of damage to those facilities. As much as they look great from the surface, below grade, they were wrecked, and none of the basement spaces as of today are open to the public and are otherwise being utilized by construction staff or are temporary measures. So everything, the basement levels, eventually will need to come up 2 feet above base flood elevation. So that is a huge project, and that's many more years in the works that be planned.
2 feet above, so you're gonna have to use those parking areas and all that too.
There's a lot of variables there to how we get to that point. And the architects have just kind of started that work this fall, even grappling the size and scope of the amount of things that will need to be relocated, what type of space. I think it was around 200,000 square feet of basement space that will need to be offset somewhere for the mechanical systems and all the other lost space in the basement.
Can't go on the roof.
It may need to go on the roof, it may need to go in addition, it may need to get mounted in a building, it may need to go in a new building, in a parking lot per se. So as much as, I'm sorry we're here under these terms, I think it's a great conversation for the future state, because the next 2 to 5 years, the complex will be this very fluid situation of work as we work down that path to understand what the end result is of these buildings.
What about the money for all that work? You gotta,
Yeah.
you got that in the bank, wait.
I got you holding my account so I can get interest. No, so yeah, it's a hugely complicated situation where right now we're going through the process with FEMA. We did the initial Cat A's and Cat B's, which are the emergency measures, so the disposal, the cleanup, and really getting systems back to temporary, because right now we're on temporary electrical permits, we're on temporary systems as I talked to that chiller that's sitting in the parking lot of 133. They've got piping running above ground down through that tunnel and cut and tight into the systems to just run them through those periods of time. Outside of 109, you'll see a new fenced in area. That's not a break space with picnic tables. That's a chiller behind there that's providing conditioning to that building. So that stuff is all going to be going on for some time as we work through the process with the architects and engineers to bring the buildings to what they call code compliance or code plus in the FEMA world. We'll start submitting projects to FEMA saying, hey, here's what we think the dollar amount is. The next part for the state is back after Hurricane Irene, they put in the flood and river corridor rule through A&R, which required state agencies and departments, primarily BGS is most of the owner of these facilities, to meet these flood codes. So it's not so much an option in the FEMA world as a requirement, which means that FEMA will have to foot a good portion of that bill as we work down that process. So
Yeah.
the answer is no, we don't have the money, but the code compliance is a much more direct path of funding than it is to go through, say, a mitigation project where we say, here's what we'd like to do because this is a better option for the state. We have to do this because it's a code compliance issue for the state of Vermont.
You ever thought about digging the river out, keep the river in the river rather than up in?
We don't have any thoughts on that, but we are in conversations with our other agencies and departments to say, hey, the river is the issue. Bailey Bridge may be an issue because it's a point of, a constriction for the river. What are we looking at as a plan there? We're working with the Montpelier flood recovery groups, and then Pat from the recovery office, as well as trying to make that global vision. But to that same point of the planning, the architects and engineers have to look at 17 different buildings and how do they coalesce together? How do they work as a system? Because a lot of them are interconnected, right? If you think about this, Montpelier is served by the heat plant. Both the state complex is an underground network of steam piping that goes all through all of these buildings, as well as downtown Montpelier that feeds the city. And each building on the steam line has to have a condensate drain and pump. So that's the lowest level in the basement. So when we talk about filling basements or bringing things up 2 feet above flood elevation, that could be a complete re-engineering of our steam systems per se. So just a hugely complex issue that it's going to take months and months and months to get to the place where we even have a plan to come through our HCI and SI committee and say, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you guys, it's Montpelier downtown. So a lot of people are going to want to have input on what that future vision looks like. And we're certainly aware of trying to head that off at the pass. So, I spoke to a lot of these things. It's a lot of process. The repair of buildings is ongoing. All of it pretty much basement level. We have a contractor on site since, about August, and they've maintained on site, which made our FEMA funding really easy to track.
They're coming in August.
They've been here since August. So when we started trying to reopen buildings, get the elevators back running, get those temporary electrical systems back in, get those temporary chillers, this contractor has handled all of that, all the permitting, all the inspections, all of the work with their subcontractors to ensure that work got done. And they've done extremely well, meeting those target deadlines to get us back in our buildings, at least above the basement levels. And so we've found great success with them so far. And as we continue on, they've actually hired the architect, it's French Freeman, who we use on everything else anyhow, but they're the ones that hired French Freeman to then work with other subcontractors to figure out, okay, we gotta put some more wall back on the river at least, because we did lose some parking spaces, we did lose some parking lot during the flooding. How do we stop this erosion from continuing at least as a immediate, I would say, encumbrance of funds to say, hey, we know we're going to need at least this much money to at least put a wall back here where it had been since the sixties or seventies, and otherwise it's not stood up well to the test of time. So pretty complicated on that. Work around legislative session. You guys are very familiar with the constrictions of parking. 133 State Street is a full parking lot most of the time because a lot of the legislature uses it as well as state employees to the 133 tax building. That tax building holds VGS and the Department of Tax. So a lot of times there's no parking lot there anyhow, regardless. So the work for this, we envision happening off session so that we could say, all right, VGS tax, you're gonna have to move to across the street perhaps during work days while we stage equipment, maybe have a crane running overhead with these types of pieces of material that are coming out of the basement.
So what? I guess it's pretty clear that you've got that work that has to be done and you're planning on doing it
That's right.
this summer.
That's our hope,
So
yes, sir.
what's the alternative for the farmers?
Yeah, well, let's work, well, so we can hop through these really quickly, then the rest of them are a lot of pictures. Piece by piece, we talked about all of that good stuff. We can keep going, Linda, that'd be great. So here's one of the mechanical rooms, and in 2019, when we had a study done, there was about $19 million of equipment just in these rooms for give you a scope of size
In 19,
in 2019. So that
it's
number,
all gone.
yeah, everything's gonna have to be replaced and brought above grade. So it's all gonna come out.
$20 million?
Yes, just in the equipment.
That's not bad.
And that was in 2019, and we know what prices have done since then.
Got to use it for 4 years.
Yeah, well, it wasn't new in 2019. They just we did a study on flood
Oh,
elevations.
was it?
Excuse me. We did a study on the flood elevations and the impact when we did flood certificates for the insurance program. So they did an assessment of what the cost of the equipment for replaceable is. Because they give you that, okay, if you do nothing, here's probably what you're gonna encumber for cost if a disaster did happen, such as today. That number outweighed the mitigation cost, or did not outweigh the mitigation cost, which was more expensive at that point.
How old was the equipment?
It varies in degree. This building was built in the 20s, 1924, so there's been varying degrees of upgrades and change outs of.
Well, it must have flooded out since the 20s because the whole of the downtown, this wasn't any higher than it was in the 90s.
This building did
I
not,
remember that flood.
we did not flood these buildings in 92 during the ice jam. Some of them did. That building in particular did not, for whatever reason. Same thing in Irene, right? We didn't see the damage from up here. But this time we saw water higher than, at least the people that have been here 40 years never saw it impact our buildings at that
The
point.
rivers filled up that much more on the bottom, so.
Yeah.
No,
I remember Ralph going down in the bucket loader down the main street.
It's kind of fun in the Supreme Court building, when we were tearing the walls out, to clean up everything, there's a mark, the Bridgeville Dam did a lot of work because the mark inside the basement of 111 is about 4 to 5 feet higher than we were. So we marked it, painted it, and then at some point we covered it up with a wall and we didn't find it until we cleaned it out and
Route 27.
after the 27th flood, but it's still marked in the basement of the Supreme Court building, which is pretty, it's sad to see, but pretty interesting to see that somebody marked it back then as important as it was, and we see the difference today. So we can go to the next slide. The next couple are just pictures of those areas. So that's all mechanical equipment, switch equipment, that's all gonna come out. Every piece has to be disassembled. All the piping that you see here, a lot of this pipe is the steam line pipe, so the insulation has already been taken off once because it was saturated with that really nasty water that we had. But the steam loop runs about 240 degrees. So the spaces would have been inhabitable if we did not re-insulate prior to the heating season. So there was push.
That's cool. So do you have the staff to do this? Because with, so it's, you're having, it's hard to find work. Well, right, but that's what I mean. So are you finding the contract?
Yeah, they've done an extremely good job, I will
So you're
say.
finding
I
people to do
can't
it.
say enough great work from the contractor that came in, did the cleanup. That was we started in state, they didn't have the resources. The out-of-state company that came in. Our mechanical rooms have never been cleaner, to be fair. They just cleaned every screw, they disinfected every piece. It was really important for us knowing state employees and their awareness of their environment to make sure the air quality was good. So everything got cleaned to a level. We then brought in an industrial hygienist that tested all the floors that were affected and the floor above it to make sure there was no mold, there was no mildew, there was no other bacteria that had been growing since the flood. And those came back so well from that contractor that the industrial hygienist ended up going, we're going to continue to work through it, but we don't need to do what we normally do because it's the first time we've ever seen things go as well. So we were extremely lucky. The insurers, the first message when I called risk management was, we have to stop further loss. And so we put all those white tubes that we saw all summer was just dehumidification, fresh air, cold air, or warm air, depending if the space was wet, or if we were just cooling it to make sure mold didn't grow. And we have found zero mold since the flood in any spaces today. So we're pretty proud of that one because it's a huge dollar. Next, please. Again, just more of the same, but just a lot, right? We can go to the next one.
That electrical stuff must all got it bad.
Every piece, anything that got floods for electrical has to be replaced, period. And so even if we put it back in the basement, some of the lead items like this yellow, that's the cat generator, that's down about 25, 30 feet. See that little louvered window just above the exhaust there?
Yep.
That wall got put in after the generator did. So that's the wall I've been talking about. We'll need to cut out. And then we'll have to move that into the room. The next room over is where that shaft that we talked about is. And then we'll have to crane that out, whether it comes out in 1, 2, 3, or 12 pieces or unsure of. Looks great though, right? They cleaned the heck out of it.
Yeah.
It's just,
Oh,
it got
this is
flooded.
all after the.
This is all after the cleaning. I took these pictures last night.
Wow.
So a lot of this equipment, that generator is not operational today. There was water coming out of the dipstick when we finally, it took us about 10 to 12 days to get all the water out of this building because these are sub-basement levels below the main level.
Was that motor running when
It was running at one point. Yes, it was. So,
During the clinic and then it got wet.
in the water?
yeah, so they lost power at some point. Generator came on, automatic transfer kicked on, and then it inundated. And so that generator from the consultants it's no good. So that'll have to be replaced as part of this project.
It hadn't started, couldn't been salvaged.
It was pretty interesting because when we came in, I came in Tuesday morning. I'm the fire chief in Virginia. I really did disaster work all over the country. So I was like, I'm coming, I gotta see what's going on. We got here Tuesday and a lot of the buildings still had power in them, even though the basement where all of our electrical panels are, they were still powered. And we had to get GMP in here as soon as the floodwater receded to drop the actual main lines to the poles. The governor's office at 109, the Pavilion building, that generator's running, still powering everything in all levels. So it was pretty scary, yet impressive to see the systems hold up. But yet any wiring, any electrical will have to get torn out and replaced, period. We're on temporary 90-day permits for the Division of Fire Safety, knowing that this is a long process. So the contractors came in and cleaned things or replaced pieces and parts of things to get them operational to a level that they felt safe. So that's been an ongoing process since the flood. We can, and then over there's a compressor. There's 3 or 4 of them in that same room. We can hop to the next one. This is the one I want to talk about. So this is the Montpelier complex, the total complex. In the color code, it's really hard to read, but the yellow are spaces we're absolutely happy for the farmers market to use if all those yellow spaces are available for them. The red up in the left corner next to the orange, that's 133 State Street here.
That's where they were.
That's where they have been. Obviously, last year they went to the college during the flood after a couple sessions. So any of the yellow, the red up above, we just kind of marked off because we don't think that's space that they would want anyhow. And
No.
you guys in the legislature typically do use that space throughout 7 days a week, depending on who's here and who's working. The yellow, big yellow lot down to the left is the Department of Labor building down. I know it's not straight downtown, but just as you go out of Montpelier on the right-hand side, next to the high school. Yeah, just up to the high school.
What's the big, down there, the yellow part across the street from that?
This is Taylor Street lot here.
Yeah,
That's
it's down behind the auditor's office.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's all.
Plenty of room there.
Yeah. And then this is the Department of Labor building here. It's kind of cut from the rest because it's not on the complex, but we wanted to show you what option we had to offer. And we're happy. They can have any of that space. We will work to move our internal operations around. The weekends are not so hard for us to do that. I just worry on 133 to constrain us to not be able to do some of that work, that it may become in conflict and slow that process up. It's not a hill that we want to die on. We don't want to create fight. We think the farm markets are great.
You might need that space for a couple of years.
Well, that's the other conversation, as I alluded to, that I'm happy that we're here today to talk about, because the next 2 to 5, every one of those buildings is going to need something. And at what day and what time, I have no idea. Could there be a building that goes up somewhere to house mechanical? It's possible. We don't know yet. So I want to make sure that as we start working here, that our Capital City Farmers Market understands that each year it may be a little different. That's with the exception of the Department of Labor parking lot. There's no work there that we plan to do. That's off campus. They took a little bit of damage, but it was very small.
So do you plan on doing any work like behind the auditor's office, behind
Oh
agriculture.
yeah, all those buildings will need work at some point in that next time period.
We should-
And so I wanted to, let's flush that out today and understand that there will be flexible and we're happy to meet in the winter and say, hey, here's what we're hoping to do this year. Where can we make that arrangement? But that's kind of what we're up against.
Yeah, we should have probably had one of them,
Yeah, we
sit
should.
through this, hopefully they're listening to it, anybody else, but hopefully they're,
We've been working with Secretary Tebbets as well on this. And so him and I have been in contact immediately after we sensed the frustration from them. He's aware, we've talked about this. Obviously, we're all very supportive. We want to be supportive
well, sure,
within the confines
you
of,
gotta do your work.
then that's right.
Brian.
Think, and I know you had one too, Brian, can I just jump?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Dave, I'm wondering, since the market was there last year, is there a way for you to delay what you need to do at 133 so that at least they have this summer? And then with some advance warning, they could get to the Department of Labor?
Yeah, I think we could bring it back to the team. I would say the planning priorities, it would be best to do it this summer. But again, like I said earlier, not a hill that we want to start any huge fights on or start any sort of animosity. So if there's really no other way, we will adjust. I'll put that out there today. We're not going to sit here and just be stonewalling this group, but
Because you indicated there'd be a delay anyway, that you don't know.
we don't know exactly when. The teams are working actively
Yeah.
on setting that up for this summer, knowing
Okay.
as soon as session's gone, hopefully we jump in and start doing some work. That has not been concreted today, and could we pull that raise back? We certainly could. But it would be our preference if we could find alternative solutions to not have to do that.
Yeah, but the farmer markets run into the fall, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they're open probably from May through October.
So this, say if they didn't get started till September, though, moving
Yeah.
in the middle of the session would, I should think, be harder for the farmer markets than if they just set up at the beginning and
Right.
give them location.
Sure.
And so you've got quite a few ifs.
I do. That's what we've been living with since July for sure. It's been a
Right.
very fluid process.
So, the,
But, I gotta get Brian, he's been.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Brian. Yeah.
I just been texting Gus back that came in.
Yeah.
Or who's in the group, he's got the two names of the people. He said somebody could come in tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock if we had time.
From the farmers,
Market,
well, they should have been here today, but
well, I
I
didn't,
think I messed up.
They can watch that.
well,
Yeah,
if they came in tomorrow morning though,
Watch the video and then come in.
And we're happy to meet with
he's
them.
up,
That would be our preference, to
he's
sit down
already-
and just have the same conversations with them.
he's already, got the link to the video and sending it to the, what was Gus's last
We
name?
just, yeah,
Oh, the one that wrote us? I had a.
Gus? Griffin.
Yeah, and
Molly
he's,
Podmore,
he's, Lila LePage from, the LePage Farm.
Yeah.
And he said Carrie is the farmer's market manager. But he said, he could come in tomorrow morning and he'll contact them and see if we could get one of them, if that would work.
well, it worked for us, I mean, could come in at 9.
Yep,
You wanna send me that email?
I will, let me text him back
Yeah, and then give
and
me the contact.
he'll give you the contact.
Or you could zoom in this morning.
Yes.
He said he's in the woods.
Okay.
He's
All right.
texting me from the
You're
woods.
getting
Okay.
close to sugar in here,
Must be
we haven't already got ready.
He didn't give you heck for bothering him. I mean, usually in the woods, you got chainsaws running
I
and bits.
and he didn't give me
But
that yet.
anyways, yeah, we can have them tomorrow morning. I hate to bother you to come back, but.
I think my only issue is I'm supposed to be in the city of Rutland tomorrow for a meeting with the mayor down there in the afternoon, so I'll have to look at my
Well, I
schedule.
can fix that.
If,
Is the areas that, thanks for sharing, are the areas, the other options, are they all ready to go?
Yeah.
Is there's nothing that would need to be done for them to?
I would say we probably would sweep the parking lots like we do in the fall, this spring
Yeah,
anyhow.
other than that.
And, typically, the 133 parking lot, and it is a very nice parking lot, it's secluded with a single entry. So these are a little bit different, but our security team we would be happy to assist them in blocking off the other entrances and making that more of a, however they'd like to, orientate that, we can
Yeah.
certainly do that work. Yeah.
I didn't realize the flood dome got all the way up here to the State House.
Well, partially.
July, right?
No, it got about halfway up the State House lawn, about halfway where that building, the first picture I had, that was about extended. There was actually an oil line on Aiken Ave for quite some time where that was where it started receding, but yeah, just about halfway up the State House lawn.
Yeah.
We had some water coming in here. We had people spend the night in this building because there was some water seeping through the wall from the runoff itself. Yeah, so we didn't actually have any flooding from here. We did some infiltration.
We haven't had our elevator working all session.
Elevators are a tough one. They're almost 2 years out on parks right now. There's only a couple companies in the state that do that. So we have a lot of, right now, we still have many elevators out. We've been able to get onesie twosies. Secretary Tebbett's building still doesn't have an elevator as of today. We're still waiting on parts and manpower to do that. Yeah. So they've been very gracious to work with us and find alternatives.
That
But
basement must have got it
it
back.
did. It was interesting. The flood level rate came, from Taylor Street out deeper on the Bailey Ave. So like 144 State Street, which is that extreme left purple building, that had about 5 to 6 feet of water in it on the first floor level. And those first 4 purple buildings from left to right, those all are still closed today.
Yeah.
And they had water into the first floor spaces. So the auditors building, the Arts Council, the information center that was there, all had water on the first floor. Green Mountain Care Board was in 144 prior to the flood.
Yeah.
So those buildings are still not opened as of today. Everything else has been reopened, basement up, or up from the basement, first floor up. It was a lot.
And, it's too bad to spend all those millions of dollars to rehab those buildings without doing something first to prevent it from happening this summer coming all over again.
Well, and that's why we've stopped that work place to say, those 4 buildings, first floor, we could find space. Those are smaller populations. The rest of them, we haven't put anything permanent back in the basements, knowing that FARC rule that I spoke to from A&R is going to require us to do that work. And so that'll really make those buildings much more flood resilient in the future.
So how you go, what's the plan to keep the water from going in?
So it could be filling the basements. Like that's what happened in Waterbury. Some of those buildings were either torn down or the basements were filled with concrete flowable fill, some sort of structural material. And then they raised the utilities in those spaces. They offset them in some of the new construction or different areas that were created to house that utility systems. So that's how they did that in Waterbury. And Waterbury is a great example of what worked, right? So that flooded in July and it also flooded in December into the parking lot spaces and no damage to the buildings after that effort. So we use that as a huge success story to show what
So they were spared.
they were spared. We cleaned some mud out in the parking lot, some catch basins out, but other than that, it was
Yeah.
dry.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead. No, please, go ahead.
you don't like thinking out loud.
I was just wondering, it's amazing that you just filled this with concrete to prevent it. So those basements are gone. They're just,
There's a lot of different ways. So you can
Yeah.
fill the basements, you can flood proof them, so you might have to dig around the entire outside, just like the perimeter drain that you put in.
yeah.
Seal the penetrations, seal the building, and then you may have to protect the utilities that are inside even further in flood-proof rooms. So there's lots of, and that's what I talk about, the planning effort from our architects have so much to bite on to understand which one of those, maybe 3 or 4 different options for flood-proofing or flood resilience works the best. And it may be all 4 depending on the building and the location. So it's gonna be a long process. There's not gonna be a sprint for us. It'll be a marathon for sure. But we just don't know yet. But yeah, there's lots of options, but the options require work, lots and lots of work to get there.
What about a berm?
Senator Collmore, the first thing I said, it was looking at some food. I said, let's put a wall around this thing. You see it, Binghamton or down there in New York, they did that. The issue there is with the density down here, once you move that water, it's going to somebody else's backyard. She's going to somebody else's house.
Well, down there
So
on
curious.
lots, there isn't anything but cornfield.
Well, I'm not getting into destroying any more crops than we already had. But no, I think there's that conversation, is it a part of a wall in a certain space? And then we raise this building over here. The other contributing factor to us is most of the buildings of Montpelier complex, with the exception of 144 State Street and 109, are historically contributing to the historic district of downtown Montpelier. That doesn't mean we can't mitigate them. We've worked with Laura Trishman from ECCD, and as long as it doesn't change why that building was contributing, so 118, where there's mentioned the Fair VFW, is that building is contributing. It's got a mansard roof. Well, lifting that building a couple feet or 5 feet in the air won't change the roof. It'll still look like that building. It'll still be contributing. So it's going to be another variable in the design process, is saying, okay, can we move this building because it's historic? Does it change the nature of why it's contributing to the district? Is the SHPO, the State Preservation Officer, okay with that design? And so that's a lot of what we're going to have to deal with over the next, that planning process over the next 12 to 18 months. But hopefully by next session, we're in committee's giving you at least the first draft of what we hope to accomplish. But it's a long road ahead of us, there's no doubt.
Irene,
Mr. Chair. Gosh, where to begin? My sense was the farmer's market was at the college the last time it opened.
They started at 133 last year. The flood occurred and then they left and had to relocate. I believe they went to the college for the duration.
So they have an attachment to 133, but it's not like everybody who went there is like, of course, we're going back to 133 this year.
Yes,
They're hoping for it, but they've already been moved once.
I would say
right?
that's accurate. Yes.
Okay. And when we talk about all the temporary systems that have been set up, my understanding is that FEMA hasn't yet approved setting and paid for permanent systems to be installed in all these
That's
buildings.
right.
And when will that happen? Because I just feel like temporary doesn't feel right. Oh, it's temporary electrical, it's temporary heating. Really? Like, when do we rebuild?
Yeah, so rebuild as of the previous conversation. Once they figure out how to rebuild to code compliance, it'll probably be 3 years before that process starts. I would say 2-3 years.
All right.
yeah, so we could get flooded again before we get out of this.
Right.
Yeah, it's possible. Hopefully not, but it is possible. Obviously, the world is changing in that environment.
Which bridge is messed up? The one up here?
I don't know if it was messed up, but we certainly saw that being a constricting piece of the puzzle. The days leading after the flood, we were very concerned, and we watched. And if you remember, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 days after we got even more, and we were watching, and the debris had not been removed from that bridge yet. The trees.
Can't take any trees.
Oh goodness! So we did get approval to have a contractor come in on emergency to pull it, because I was actually on the phone with National Weather Service and emergency web said, "You guys are telling us we're going to have this much rise. Does that include what I'm seeing here? That there's only about 6 feet open underneath this bridge?" I sent the guy a picture. He goes, oh no, we got to figure that out. I said, okay. So we ended up having a contractor come in and remove that debris to give that river more room, so we didn't have that backup at the Bailey Bridge. But I think there's larger groups in state government. I know there's larger groups in state government and with the local municipalities through the flood recovery office looking at how do all these pieces come together to make the most resilient solution that we could come up with. Is it a clean and easy solution? I don't think that it is. Everybody's got competing priorities of what they'd like to see in the future. I think everybody agrees on resilience is what we need to see. How that looks is what will be up for discussion, I think.
Right?
Yes, sure. So are you working with ANR about the river and river management? Or is there some kind of?
Yeah, there is. We've discussed it with them. We're aware of them applying for some funding and river studies through the flood recovery office. We know that there's different groups doing different studies on the river and and that's the entire Winooski corridor, right? Not just in Montpelier, how that looks throughout to its eventual end at Lake Champlain. So there is that work going on. I would say that it's early for everyone. So any sort of tangible understanding of how we mitigate those things together has not come to any sort of place for consideration. But yeah, we are working with all the state partners are working really well. And the other piece of this puzzle that's interesting is there's something called substantial damage in buildings during disaster events. So if you have over 51% damage of the building, of the property, of the building's market value pre-flood, they consider that substantially damaged, which then requires the entire building, not just the damaged floors, to be brought up to code. So that the A&R actually makes that determination on structure through the Rivers program. We give them the numbers, we say, here's what we have for damage, here's what we know the building's worth. They didn't say, yep, this building's substantially damaged, now you need to bring the entire rest of the building up to code. We're not even close to that, understanding that yet. That's that process that we're working through right now. So primarily on those non-historic structures, so that because those are much easier to handle.
Yeah.
Scary. I mean, we could get another one like we're all saying.
Yeah.
But we hear a lot about fixing what broke and got flooded,
Yes,
but we don't hear a thing about fixing the problem of, I mean, the only thing we hear about fixing the problem is getting rid of gas powered cars and
I'll stay away from that one.
and, you know,
I would go for that.
cutting down on fossil fuels, and that's gonna end our problems with all this. And personally, I think that's total bull. But, you know, there's certainly something wrong with our climate.
Sure.
And there's no argument about that, whether, you know, the earth moved a whisker or what the heck ever happened. But, you know, we got these crusaders that are, it's all caused by fossil fuels. And yet there's more airplanes taking off and more spaceships taking off, and never hear a word about air travel or any of that. It's damn cars and trucks, and, you know, until we get our heads screwed on straight and realize that this is going to keep coming. So let's fix the problem that's causing all this damage, like the rivers.
Sure.
And, you know, boy, I'll tell you, in private business, we wouldn't last a month, because we have a problem here.
Yes.
We just throw money at it. So in private business, if you have a problem, there isn't any money to just throw at it. So you figure out what the heck's going on and fix it yourself.
I'm pretty new to I've been the state almost 2 years now, but I came from private mine and ran an excavation company prior to this job, so understand the concerns there. I can tell you, at least for BGS's world, we are working really hard to make those buildings resilient, and we'll work with our partners on the river side, which certainly in BGS's world, but we're working together to say, hey, here's the things we want to do. Are there other ways? Can we, you know, some of the things we talked about, do you demo a couple of buildings that are not so big to create more room for the river to have some breathing area? You know, there's discussion on, and this is just from Montpelier, this is just statewide. Is there ways to terrace the river to give it, again, some of the things that they've done overseas? Those things are much past BGS point of view, but we are resolute in our ability within whatever confines of funding, right? It always comes down to the dollar, what we can get to be these buildings more resilient the next time, not when or if, the next time that happens. So we're gonna make sure to follow that code, in the state of Vermont did a really great job putting that flood and river corridor rule in effect, because it mandated that requirement as opposed to, we should do these things. No, we have to do these things. So federal government, we need to make sure that you pay your portion of the bill as that comes due. So we're working through that process today. We meet with FEMA weekly. At least they were on site yesterday doing site inspections with us, about 4 or 5 people, inventorying the basements. Every time they go, well, it only take a day, and then we get in the basement of 133, and they go, oh, yeah, no, we'll be here longer than that. So it's going, but it'll be slow. But we are, the commissioner, the administration has certainly put down the line. We want to make these things the best that we can.
FEMA's been good to work.
They have been. Yeah, I think they're a bigger bureaucracy than we're even have, and we know this issue that we have, and those are multiplied by, whatever factor is multiplied by, but it's a big one on things in the processes that they have to deal with. So, yeah, they've been good though, I would say.
Are they inventorying with you? What process
Yeah,
are
so
they doing?
they come
I'm just
through,
trying to picture them.
They come through and do it site inspection, so they go through and they take pictures of the tags on the air handling equipment and the manufacturer tag if there's still one. They may measure the wall space to see how much board feet we lost in sheetrock or plaster, the piping. We also are doing that work so that we have our own numbers so that we can say, oh, FEMA, we have about a lot more money here than you guys are showing through these rough estimations. So we are back checking that work
Okay.
with our own consultants to ensure those numbers align in the state's favor for sure. Or at least start the battle, right? I'm sure that's what we'll come down to at some point. You're talking millions and millions of dollars. People are gonna certainly have feelings about wanting to write the check on it someday.
Yeah, that's right.
So I appreciate your flexibility on this particular issue with the market. And I guess we'll hear from those folks tomorrow and hopefully be able to come to a resolution by the end of the week.
Is that little packet that you had on the screen, does Linda have?
Yep, Linda's got that from us this morning. Yep, the PowerPoint.
It's online.
Yeah, it's online.
So we'll have those spots
Sure.
to show
Yeah.
those people and
I'm gonna just look at my schedule real quick, not being rude here, because even if I'm outside, I could probably come in by Zoom if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And,
The manager of the markets, probably can't come tomorrow morning, but,
okay,
they indicated that she could Zoom in.
I have a meeting with Montpelier Land about eclipse planning tomorrow morning at 9:30, but otherwise, until the afternoon, I'm pretty free and we're Kate, if you guys have met Kate, Kate's our Director of Legislative Affairs and Communications. We did that backwards, sorry. Communications, then Legislative Affairs, and Kate does all our coordination with Linda and our others.
So you can come at 9.
I could come in, I could zoom in at 9, yeah, for sure, if that works for other people, otherwise Kate could make sure we find some
you
time.
said
Yeah, she, Linda's, contacting them.
So there are 3 people I'm gonna contact.
and they can come at 9.
Yes, well, hopefully.
Oh,
I'm just-
you
Just let us know, we'll
Gus
make
said,
it work.
Gus said he could come
So
at 9.
you got
And
the
the
other
other
by 9:30.
other two.
You know, until the eclipse sets. We're, again, we like to work with Montpelier, this is Montpelier Live, we got the eclipse coming, they expect a lot of people, which is great.
That isn't coming until,
April.
oh hell.
Yeah, but they're starting their planning now, so I'm gonna meet with them about 9:30, so. yeah.
Don't just tell them, make sure they got their glasses.
There you go, that's right, permanent libraries.
Well, we really appreciate you coming in, this morning
No doubt.
and, you know, I don't know if you'll have to, if we can find a good alternative, but you certainly got enough spots there, so.
We got a lot of
And
yellow on that map,
it sounds like this isn't just for this year.
that's correct.
It's like a couple of years
Yeah.
in the making, so.
And each year's gonna look a little different than the one previous.
Sure.
Which means we're making progress, right? Like,
Yeah.
it means we're making progress towards that ultimate goal, but the forecasting that today is just impossible with all the unknowns.
Yeah. Yeah, any other
That's
questions?
great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all, and anything else, Kate will make sure we give you whatever you need or here on time.
Yeah.
Great.
very-
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Kate.
Sure.
How are you?
Good for you.
Well, we know there's some alternative sites and I don't know, you know, how much room.
Sounds like if we just get it hooked up together, we'll be all set.
Yeah, they jumped the gun.
But they're looking at a opening date probably a month,
Yeah,
so
so
they need to know where to go.
yeah, they open in April or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, dealing with the state like that is intimidating.
Well, they don't know who to get, and they, oh, this one, oh no, it's the other one.
Time are we on the floor?
We're on the floor at 1.
Okay.
You know, at 12 o'clock, there's that special event.
Yeah.
At noon.
What?
at
For,
Retirement
yeah.
celebrations.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
By this time she'll know.
Yeah. She won't watch this before. Are you ready to go out? Mine?